Thank you for tuning in to the third segment of our resume workshop. We just finished talking about the career profile in the education section, and now we want to take a deep dive into the experience in the additional section. But first, before we get started, a quick review of the undergraduate and graduate resume template. So first, the undergraduate resume template consists of career profile, education, experience, and additional. These four areas are keys in presenting your personal brand to an employer to land that interview. We've talked about the career profile in the education section, so later on we're going to talk about the experience in the additional section in this tutorial. Next is the graduate resume template, which also features the career profile, education, experience, and additional. We've already spoken about the career profile in the education section, and now we're going to dive in again to the experience and additional section, where we're going to feature previous work experience and possibly some career progression. So let's dive into the resume template again and see where we're at. So looking at the experience section, this is going to be your best chance to show how you fit into the organization and use previous examples from not only work, school, or outside group activities, whether that be volunteer or fraternity or sorority type organizations. And so here you can see this template is again clear, crisp, and concise. Plain black and white, the bolded areas are the most important, and those are bolded, obviously. And so if you look at this example of a Goldman Sachs and Bank of Texas, this student has some experience in finance. So as we go through this, I wanted to point out several bullet points and some of the key things that you need to know to help you to do a resume. So the first thing is the optional section right under Goldman Sachs. For a Fortune 500 company or a large-scale, widely known company, I would not suggest using the optional tab because the company is obviously well known. So in some cases where you work for a startup or a mid-sized company or even a smaller company that is not well positioned in the market or is well positioned but just not relatively well known, you may want to do an optional descriptor so that way the recruiter knows what the purpose of the business is and what their main function is, and to help them filter through your resume and make it easier. So underneath that you'll have the title of the job, and so as we go through, if you're doing career progression, you'll have the specific date related to that specific job. So let's dive into those bullet point recommendations that we have underneath. The first one is to open a resume bullet point with a direct action verb and avoid responsible for or assisted with. Things like responsible for or assisted with are really passive and seems like a delegated responsibility. We really want to show leadership, we want to show management, we want to show skills that can get the job done, and we want to use the strongest action verbs possible. Next, we want to begin bullet points with a variety of verbs to avoid repetition. Conceive, directed, supervised. All of those are great, but we need to make sure that we don't use the same word multiple times over. Really try to get creative with the way you open your bullet points. Next, do not use 2 pages for a resume with less than 7 to 10 years of experience. Recruiters really like to see a 1-page brief and concise resume. And if you have less than 7 to 10 years of experience, this should be an effective enough space and real estate of the page to use it effectively. Next, we talk about avoiding resume bullet points with hanging words. Those are single words on the second line. Use your resume space wisely and make sure resume is weighted properly. And what I mean by this, in this perfect example, is if you look at the word wisely, say after wisely, the rest of those words are not there. You have wisely on that second word, and then you have a whole bunch of white space beside that. That's unused real estate. In the resume business, we have to take advantage of the full real estate of the page, and so we need to either edit this bullet point to get it down to one clear, clean, concise line, or we need to bolster it up by adding more detail to make it go 2 full lines. And that will really take advantage of all the real estate on the page and really give you a chance to tell the recruiter everything you want to tell them. Next, we recommend Calibri font, and then also the section heading sizes will be 14 for heading. Name would be 17, spacer lines are 8 to 6, and text are 11 to 10.5. 10.5 is recommended as the smallest. I wouldn't go any less than that. You really want to be able to effectively and simply print out the page on any printer and have the recruiter be able to easily read it and not have any questions or be able to squint or struggle to read it. So really 10.5 is about the smallest that I would recommend going. Last, more bullet points are recommended for the most recent and relevant positions. Real estate on the page is very, very valuable. And most people think that, if you have 3 bullet points on your first job, you need 3 bullet points on your second job, or 3 on your internship, 3 on your second internship, or 3 under this organization and 3 under that organization. Well, that's completely wrong. So Our advice to you is to use the real estate of the page in whatever job, organization, or project that most benefits you and shows a clear fit. That's where you use the most bullet points and spend the most time. So if you have 2 projects or 2 previous work experiences, and say the most recent one is the one that best fits the new job that you're applying for, you will have more bullet points there than in your previous job. You may have 5, 6, 7 bullet points on that one and maybe only 2 or 3 on the other one. And so vice versa of that, if the most current job is not the best fit, but the one you did previous is, or a project you did previously, then that's where you need to spend your time on the real estate and use extra bullet points during that to really show a true fit. So please take advantage of the space that you have and realize that bullet points aren't a forced number and that you really need to have the ones in the right place that most effectively brand yourself for that position. Next, show various positions under one employer with dates to show career progression. Again, this shows the fact that you had an initial job, you did well at that job, and you were promoted. So that's amazing. But if you do it this way too in the formatting, you can also get 2 or 3 extra lines back to show more bullet points to show a better fit. So this is really a good way to show that not only did they trust you, you did a great job and you got promoted, but it also allows you to have effective use of the page. And the last one is do not adjust margins and remove all hyperlinks from your resume, including email address. Hyperlinks and margins really throw off applicant tracking systems. So I'm not saying not to have your email address on there. I'm just saying to right click and just remove the hyperlink and still leave it there. Because if it goes through an applicant tracking system already, they're going to read it and it's not going to show up as a hyperlink anyway for them to click on. It's going to go through their system and they're going to find other avenues to email you or call you directly. And the margins, you really don't want to explode the margins out to 1/2 inches or less than that because there's just too many words on the page. So we really need to do a better job of editing that down and getting it concise and brief and using effective choice of words to get it down to a manageable level and keep the margins normal. Also, specific to Baylor and other programs are internships and Focus Firm dates. So Focus Firm is an experiential class that we have at the graduate level. It's much like a capstone class in an undergraduate class or other universities have. And so really it's simply just something that you do over the summer or something that you do during the semester. And you don't need to demarcate it by July through August. You can simply put summer, spring, or fall and really denote it by season. Next, and the last one on this slide, is avoid having 1 bullet point, minimum of 2 per heading. Again, we talked about the number of bullet points not being specific. Really, the only rule about bullet points is to make sure that you have more than 1. If you have 1, you have to have 2. You can't just leave 1 bullet point hanging there, so you should at least have 2. Especially if you have an internship or a full-time job. If you've been there 10 weeks or a few months or even a few years, you should be able to easily articulate more than 2 or 3 bullet points on what you've accomplished there. And if not, we need to find another effective ways to show true fit for the position. But most, if not all, students and applicant job seekers have plenty of experience that they need to write down and effectively communicate how they fit into the position. So next, we've talked about the experience and we've talked about some tips and some clues to how to make this section better. But really the most important thing on here is bullet point development. Too many times, 90% of the resumes that we probably see are task deliverables, task bullet points, meaning I've done this or I've done that. I've looked at financial statements. I've reviewed financial statements for 10 companies. Basically, you're really just regurgitating what you've done for the last few months or years or days in your job. You really haven't effectively communicated the deliverable based off that. So what did you accomplish? So really we're looking at, I did this and this was the result. And so here are some ways that you can remember how to really develop key bullet points. Tell the complete story. I mean, you have 2 lines to use in the resume, so you may need to use all that, and that's okay. Put you in the context of the bullet point. Identify the action and the task, and have a quantifiable or results-based explanation. I designed a marketing plan which resulted in 10% increase in sales. Really tell them how you really fit. This is really a struggle with students to really develop the complete detailed bullet point. Most of the time when we get the first versions of resumes, they're always task-based bullet points. And then through one-on-one conversations and self-reflections, we're like, really answer this question. What else do I need to know as a recruiter that happened in this project that would allow me to hire you for this position? and students start talking about all the experiences and what they've done and the models they created and the plans they designed and what they implemented and how they implemented it, and all that stuff needs to go into your bullet point. So to do this, we want to give you several examples of some weak and some strong ones, and so we'll go back and forth. So this first one is a task-based bullet point, and it's very weak. So it really just tells you what you've done. Reviewed financial statements of companies with outstanding loans. Great, that tells me what you've done, but it doesn't tell me really much of anything else. So if we go over here to the strong version of this bullet point, we have analyzed financial statements of 50 plus companies with over 50 million in outstanding loans and reconciled financial reporting errors to maintain FDIC compliance. If we drill down here, we see some scope and scale, and then we also see some trust and some responsibility. So we see 50 plus companies and 50 plus million in outstanding loans. That's a pretty hefty responsibility for somebody to do that many companies with that much of a loan value. And then to finish it up, this person was responsible to make sure that they maintained FDIC compliance. And anytime you deal with compliance, there's an issue with the fact that you have to be responsible enough to make sure your paperwork's right, because you may face a fine, or you may even have to close business temporarily until you address those issues. So this is a very good picture of a weak bullet point converted to a strong bullet point by adding scope and scale and some further detail and really driving home the deliverable. Going back to the weak slide, we have the second one. It says coach new pledges to stay on track of their academic progression. Okay, that's really clear and to the point, but sometimes you need to make minor changes to better be effective. So in this one, we said mentored an average of 5 pledges per semester on their academic progression. Mentored was subbed out for coaching, which is a good word choice. And then we also have some scope and scale with some 5 pledges per semester and then academic progression. So not only was this a significant number of people that this person mentored and took time out of their schedule to deal with, they also made sure that they progressed on their academic grades to make sure that they were compliant with university guidelines and personal goals and objectives of going to college. So this really shows a good deliverable base, and it also shows some size and some responsibility in this bullet point. So you can really see the difference between those two. The third example was process student organization consent forms. That really just looks like a data entry every day kind of deal, right? So once we talk to the student, we realize that they're processing over 300 student organization consent forms each fall semester. So not only do you have 300 on the scope and size, but you also have the consent forms, which consent forms are really important from a liabilities perspective. And then each fall semester refers to the fact that it's ongoing issues. So not only do they have the trust in them that they've done it correctly this time, they're going to do it going forward. And the large scale volume of this speaks wonders more than the first weak bullet point. The last one we wanted to use is created a company training manual. Man, that sounds like a really good opportunity, but I would love to see what came out of that. So in discussing this with the student, we unpacked several things. First of all, they designed and developed a 215-page company training manual on time within budget that decreased training time and improved performance by 20%. Great bullet point, right? So not only does the designed and delivered lead me to believe that they were working off either a rough draft or no document at all, then they designed one that was 215 pages long, which is significant at best, because not only is this important to the person that's making this, but it's also important to the people that are new and old going forward that have been trained on these processes in the training manual. And then it shows budget restrictions. So this person had a budget and they were able to get everything completed on time and under budget, which is valued by employers. And what was the result of this training manual? They decreased training time and improved performance by 20%. So we have twofold here. Decreased training time, which is great because then they can get back to work and get producing quicker. And then the overall evaluation and the results of the company training manual were the improvement of performance by 20%, which is a significant number. So anytime you can show qualitative and quantitative deliverables and other scope and scale type opportunities, this makes it a complete bullet point. So you can really see the difference in this fourth example on how much better a deliverables-based bullet point is versus a task-based bullet point. So the last part I want to talk to you about in this tutorial was the additional section. This is really the catch-all. So here we recommend several different things. You can put professional certifications. Some students choose to get a CFA or a CPA or a PHR or other certifications while in school, whether you're an undergraduate or graduate school. Also, some professional associations or memberships are good to show here. Just really show that you're keyed into the function in the industry that you want to get into. Language proficiency. This is a great opportunity to talk about What other languages you speak, if any, native, fluent, or conversational, would be some ways to actually quantify those as well. That way they know your technical background and how proficient you are. Third is technical skills. Usually this would be like Excel or Word or PowerPoint or those things. Normally we'd recommend that you not put, Office Suite proficiencies, because it's going to be assumed that if you're an undergrad or graduate student that you're well versed in Office. But these days most job descriptions are going to have references to Excel skills, Word skills, internet search skills, analytic skills, those type of things. And those need to be put on there, especially if they're mentioned in the job description. And you may have other technical skills or databases like SQL or other programs that you've learned throughout your undergraduate or graduate career that would be beneficial for recruiters to see that you could place here. And last is leadership activities, volunteer works, awards, or unique elements. So if you're recruiting students, usually you want to look at what their leadership skills, the managerial skills that they can have going forward, how they can handle pressure, can they be given an assignment and deliver the assignment and really create value to the company really quickly. And so you can get these out of leadership activities and the volunteer works and really show where you spend your time and where you see value in. And then, the unique elements. So these are things like a 100-mile marathon or your pilot's license, or, you're an equestrian rider here. Different things that can keep you and make you different, conversation starters, things that separate you from other candidates. Those are really some things that you need to think about in the additional section. Now, the one thing I will caution you is sometimes, whether you're an undergrad student or a graduate student, you may have little to no experience, and so you really expand this additional section, but realize a few things. First is the resume is a working document, so as you get experience, whether that's professional, internship, or class experiential learning experience, you need to add that as your career goes on, and then take away some of the additional sections. Really, the experience section and the career profile are going to guide you and lead you, and the additional sections are just going to be those added bonuses. So if you do get to a situation where you slide onto a second page, some things that need to be cannibalized are either going to be the additional section or some of the extra bullet points on the educational section. And please feel free to contact the Career Management Office, and we'll be happy to help you out with that. So we've covered the additional section, and then earlier we covered the experience section, and we focused on bullet point development. So for the next video, we're going to talk about the resume fitting process, and we look forward to hearing from you then.